Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Utah Film Pod. My name is Josh Terry. I'll be your host tonight, and I'm here with Mark LaRocco, who is back, but we are one Danny Hatch short this evening. We're recording this in the evening. I don't know. You might be listening to this in the middle of the day. I don't know. You can listen to it whenever you want. That's the beauty of the podcast.
Morning, middle of the night, during church. Yeah, anytime.
But if this adds to your experience, dear listener, to any degree, know that we typically record these a little bit later in the evening. Kind of have to get some of the the daily obligations out of the way, set aside some of those responsibilities so we can relax and talk movies. That I don't know. It seems to work out pretty well for us, don't you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. So Danny will not be with us this week. She's gonna take some time off and hopefully do some fun stuff. We'll catch up with her again soon. But in the meantime, Mark and I, we've got some stuff to talk about. We're going to be talking about a movie coming out this weekend a little bit. We're going to be talking a lot about a movie that's been out for a little while. And then a little later on, we're going to talk about a particular genre of movies that seems to have lost a lot of its most celebrated actors recently. We're talking about gangster movies and about James Caan, who passed away recently. And so we got some good stuff. But before we get into that, I have to ask Mark, this is a little selfish of me, but there is method to the madness. I need to ask Mark, you posted recently on social media some cool photos from a location that I have actually thought about getting to and still have never done it yet. But tell us a little bit about your adventure in the cave.
Yeah, my oldest three boys and I, 10, 8, and 7, we went to we hiked Timpanogos Cave on Saturday. So I hadn't done it for probably over 30 years. And it's a nice hike. I mean, it's a pretty steep hike. It's an elevation gain of about 1,100 feet. With all the boys, it took about an hour and a half. It probably should take about 45 minutes or something. But, we don't hike a lot.
Or 2 hours.
Yeah.
Maybe closer to 2 hours.
Well, here's
depending
the catch. So now you have to buy a ticket in advance to get the cave tour,
okay.
And you have to be guided. You can't go in alone, so you have to be guided as part of the tour. So you're welcome to hike anytime you want on the actual trail, except for at night. They do lock a gate that goes up about probably a fifth of the way on the trail at around 7 or so in the evening. But and we had to get our tickets a week in advance, and we had gone camping last week. So my wife was nice enough to get up in the morning last Saturday and get us all of our tickets for this past Saturday. And it was great. We had a good time. I was a little worried it was going to be too hot because we've been getting into the hundreds, high 90s and hundreds lately. But it's a north-facing mountain, and it has a lot of trees. There's a lot of cover and shade. And it's a paved trail, too. It's not like a hard hike in terms of technical difficulty. It's just kind of steep. And we got to the cave, and my oldest is just this clever, mind like a steel trap kind of a kid. And the guide was great. The guide was really knowledgeable, very nice. He'd been doing it for a couple of months, but he just knew everything about the cave. He took questions, and it seemed like he was able to answer most of the questions as well. And when we got home, my son started relaying to my wife what he'd learned, and it was just like he was just repeating everything the guy said. It was so funny. Yeah. And we asked my second, well, what were some of the things called, or what were the rocks made out of? And he didn't know. He didn't hardly know anything. But my oldest just knew everything, and it was cool. It's a desert limestone cave, and even the hike, you walk through different formations that are basically 900 million years ago, 600, 550, 400, and then you get to the cave and still 300 million years ago or something. And we learned, the difference between stalactites and stalagmites, and what are helictites, and there's a section of the cave. There's 3 caves actually. The first one is called Hansen Cave, the second is Middle Cave, and the third is Timpanogos Cave. And there's a section in Middle Cave where they say, hey, do you guys want to know what it feels like to be in pitch black? And so and their guide, the tours are about 16 people, with plus a guide, and they turn off all the lights in the cave, and you can't even tell if your eyes are open or closed. You can't tell if your hand's in front of your face.
Wow.
I mean, it really is the most pitch black I've ever been in.
So it's lit. So they have lights in there.
Yeah, they have lights all through the cave. They run electricity through it. They have
Okay.
they build some little boardwalk areas kind of in a few sections, and there's a lot of sections, and they have handrails. But I mean, they send you through a good portion of the cave, and some of it you have to duck really low, and like you have to take your backpack off and put it on your front or hold it. And if you're other than a kid who's my youngest son probably hardly ever had to duck. But most of the people on the tour, there are at least a dozen times where you have to duck or contort your body a little bit different to get through it.
Cool.
So now there are large sections. I mean, there's large chamber-like rooms that are, maybe 10, 15 feet tall and or wide enough that you can fit a whole group of people in there with no problem. But there's quite a few narrow sections. But it was a lot, really, really cool stalactites and stalagmites.
Yeah.
And then they're columns when they come together. And
Well, because I saw your pictures. Your pictures looked
Yeah.
awesome, and of course I'm thinking, oh man, could I get in there and take pictures and stuff? But I didn't know what
Yeah,
kind of lighting
you
they had in there.
could-
If it was just kind of filtering in from the outside, or if it was artificial.
You'd probably have a heyday with it because some of it there's lights, and you can use your own lights, but you could bring a really good camera and get good close-ups of like the Great Heart of Timpanogos. It's like a really big stalactite, and they call it cave popcorn. A lot of what's on the side, and there's cave bacon. I mean, it was funny. They had funny names for a lot of areas, a lot of little formations in there. I took a picture of a spider. I don't know if it was a huntsman spider, but they said there's huntsman spiders in the caves. But I couldn't. That was a hard one to get a good, focused close up of. But
That's cool.
anyway, it was a lot of fun, and they told us some stories about how because you think about when people explore caves for the first time, they don't know where they're going, and this cave was actually discovered in the late 1800s, and these people didn't have lights. I mean, they were. There was a group of people, I believe their last name was Hansen, and they thought one of the caves they were going in was 60 feet deep. So they lowered a 60-foot rope, and they got to the end of the rope, and the cave kept going.
Oh no.
So they just sort of were stemming, like bridging their way down, and just trying to kind of shimmy their way down without knowing how deep it was going to go, and without light. And that particular cave was 110 feet, so it was another 50 feet without a rope. Anyway, and then like Timpanogos Cave itself was the last one that was discovered, and it was discovered by two 14-year-old boys, and they discovered the natural entrance to it, and they thought they could make some money off it. And back then when people discovered caves, that was the first thought. Oh, we can charge people to come in, and this could be a profit thing. It's not. It wasn't a national park. It wasn't actually made a national monument until 1922, 100 years ago, under the Harding administration. But these 14-year-old boys discovered Timpanogos Cave, and they decided to hide the entrance, like cover it with sticks and branches and rocks, so that no one else would find it, and then they could come back. And they hid it so well they didn't find it. So the entrance didn't get found for about another 9 years, and then by then that was around 1921, 22 when it was made into a national monument. So it was a great time. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, well, so my parents have been there and they've talked about it, so I've heard about it for years, and I was going to try to do it. So 2 years ago, when when a lot more things were shut down, and I kind of got onto this hiking kick, and so I was going to a lot of, just doing a lot of new trails and places I'd never been, and I did a lot of them. Kind of up along the Alpine Loop, and so passing by the Timpanogos Cave Trail, but the cave was closed. I assume because of COVID, and so I wasn't able to do it. But it's kind of been one of those on the list, kind of in the back of my mind since then. So when I saw that you had done it, I had to ask, and conveniently enough, this is not just a tangent because this weekend, the big or one of the big new movies that is coming out is about some people exploring caves, and their experience probably not as fun as yours, I would just assume, if you had to ask them. This is a movie called 13 Lives. It's based on a true story, and it's already been made into a documentary. So last year you might have seen a documentary called The Rescue, which is available now on Disney Plus. It's a National Geographic documentary, and so it's on the Disney Plus streaming platform. But Ron Howard has made a live action version of the same story, which is the story of 12 Thai soccer players, kind of young boys, and their coach, who were exploring a cave in Thailand about 4 years ago. I think this was the summer of 2018, and basically what happened is the monsoon season started early, like immediately after they went into the cave, and so they were trapped. They were in there for quite some time, and 13 Lives, of course, is the story of a group, thousands of people who came together from around the world to try to help to rescue them, to get them out. Specifically, a group of British divers who were these middle-aged guys who really were just kind of hobbyists, but because of their expertise had been kind of called into situations like this. And I'm not going to go into a ton of it right now because I still want you guys to see it and maybe get some more input from your end. But just to sum it up, I loved it. I thought this was a fantastic movie. It was very, very, based on a true story. And then, of course, I wound up watching The Rescue as well. I hadn't seen the documentary previously, but after watching the documentary, I liked the Ron Howard movie better. It seems to be pretty faithful to what really happened, but just the method of storytelling and the suspense and the tension and the way that certain things are revealed. Again, I don't want to give away too much right now, or just in general, but yeah, if you're looking for something uplifting and inspiring and really good quality to see this weekend, and you don't want to just go see Maverick again, I would recommend 13 Lives. It was a good one, and we'll talk some more about that one in the in an episode to come. And so Mark, I'm glad that you and the boys didn't require an international assembly of rescue workers to complete your experience like these guys did. But that's
yeah. Well, maybe I do want to see Top Gun again because it's still my favorite movie.
I still, I don't
I've seen it twice now,
and I've still only seen it the one time. It is hands down my favorite movie of the year. I really doubt that anything is going to come out that's going to displace it, at least in terms of kind of like your big blockbuster movies. And yet, I just haven't been going out to see more than just the new things that have been coming along. So
yeah,
including one that we've both seen a movie that we're going to talk about next that's been out for about a week and a half. Probably by the time you guys can hear this episode, it'll probably have been out for about a week or so. The new Jordan Peele movie, Nope, which is, I guess, initially I kind of went into it thinking it was a horror movie. And for about the first hour, I still thought it was a horror movie. And it's kind of a sci-fi movie. And by the end of it, I don't know. I think I'd probably call it sci-fi horror more than I would call it horror sci-fi. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's. I kind of just think of it as an alien movie. So depending on how you want to think of alien movies, and of course, alien movies you can break them down into like, well, are the aliens nice and friendly like E.T. or are they trying to kill us like Independence Day?
Yeah.
So
or are they just spooky like Close Encounters, right?
Right.
Because they were nice, but they were spooky.
They were spooky, and this is more of the trying to kill us type, I think.
Yeah.
And I really, I do want people to see this movie, so I'm really trying hard not to give spoilers.
Yeah. But, I think the most simple way to describe it. So just for a little bit of background, Jordan Peele has. I think the reason I went into this assuming horror is because he's made 2 horror films already. Get Out a few years ago. The second one was Us from just a couple years ago. And both of those are very, straightforward horror movies. Although I would put kind of, the Get Out was a little bit more of kind of a psychological suspense, tension, thriller, horror movie, and whereas Us was a little bit more violent, let's say. But with Nope, it seems like he's kind of exploring some different but related genres, right? Because there's still some elements of horror and there's still quite a bit of tension, but it's leaning more into kind of a science fiction area, and it basically follows the exploits of a young man named OJ, which I think is supposed to be kind of a running gag in the film,
Mm-hmm.
who is running a struggling ranch just outside of Hollywood, where he basically provides horses for different Hollywood productions. And his father, and I think his father before him, have run this ranch for decades, but they're falling on hard times, having a lot of problems. They've got kind of a tense relationship with a Wild West theme park that's just down the canyon from them. It's run by Stephen Yeun from Walking Dead. He was also in what was the movie last year that he was
Minari.
in Minari, yeah.
Yeah.
So he's just down the road, and some strange things start happening, and it starts kind of messing with the horses even more. And slowly we find out what's going on with what is causing the strange things. So to be properly ambiguous, we're not giving away too much. And one thing leads to another, and eventually there's kind of the big climactic third act, like in movies like this. So I don't know. Maybe I'll just flip it over to you, Mark. What did you think of this?
So I liked it. I mean, and I haven't seen Us, so I can't really comment on the whole trifecta of the Jordan Peele movies. And I think he's considered to be a very good filmmaker because all three of them are now, supposedly critically acclaimed, and I think audiences have largely enjoyed them. But I've not seen Us. I did like Get Out more than this. I thought it was just more. Well, in a lot of ways, it was better. Probably.
Yeah, I agree.
And
I agree.
More groundbreaking and more shocking, even, and more
had more substance to it.
More substance, and but this one, it was interesting. Here's a few things I liked about it that I noticed. First of all, Jordan Peele showed incredible restraint in holding back on what could have been shown early on in this movie by building the suspense of trying to figure out what really was going on.
Right.
And then even once you start figuring it out and you start seeing things happening, it's still there. It's still obscured. Like it's still there's a kind of a cloud in the way, or there's a scene, for example, where a creature appears to be kind of lifted up, but by this time there's so many point of view shots in this movie, but the main character, Daniel Kaluuya, who plays Otis Haywood Jr. He's basically in a shed, and you don't see what's happening out there other than through the slats of the shed, where it's really, really windy, and it looks like the horse is starting to go up in the air, and I just loved it. I mean, it made it almost scarier than just straight up showing exactly what happened.
Oh yeah.
And I think there's a lot of scenes like that in the movie. I mean, for me, some of the scariest scenes in the movie had nothing to do with what was happening on the ranch. It involved sort of a subplot involving a chimp.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that too.
Yeah, and even what happens with the chimp, you don't really see it. I mean, you know what's happening. It's very clear, and it's even told in sort of narration by a character in the movie. But like, even it's point of view shot from the point of view of a kid, and so it's scary, and it's even a little bit gory. I mean, I think it earns its rating, but it doesn't show as much as it could show. I mean, if it were a Tarantino movie. Which is interesting because he's a very exploitative filmmaker, and for example, like somebody gets shot, like he would just love to show like the blood spray out of someone's head and a close up and slow motion and all that. And I've noticed Peele does not do that as much. And this movie did not have even the violence. I don't know about Us. I've heard it's very violent, but even compared to Get Out, I don't think it was as violent or as gory or bloody as Get Out.
No, I don't remember a lot of the gore from Get Out. I don't remember a lot of the violence particularly. I do remember that Us is much more in your face about it. Like it's much more kind of shocking and graphic. Mm-hmm. Now, what's interesting about Tarantino, you mentioned, is that there are definitely elements of this movie of Nope that kind of seem to echo Tarantino's habit of kind of filling it, like having characters kind of go on monologues where they just kind of talk about like the history of Hollywood and kind of background of
It's true.
various. So I had read that, I read another
He,
review somewhere that somebody kind of pointed that out. So I can't take credit for the observation,
right.
but there's definitely that, that
Yeah.
element there. And I felt the same way. I thought a lot of the, the cinematography and the choices of perspectives were definitely among the movie's strengths and a lot of the highlights.
The writing is more similar to Tarantino, especially because of like the swearing, but also like the what looked like offbeat, commentary or unnecessary conversations that characters might have. But they do turn out to be, in their kind of weird way, related, to what's going on in the story. So I think in that sense, yeah, he does have a good writing style, and it was weird. I mean, and he's a pop culture guy too. I mean, I counted so many little references that characters say, even from other horror movies, like come out wherever you are. I heard "It's here," which is a poltergeist line.
Oh, yeah.
I heard there's quite a few, and then it's funny. There's one of the characters in this movie who I think is actually the most interesting character references SNL for quite a long time, talking about an SNL skit.
Right. No, and I think that's a kind of a Tarantino move, right? Where you have characters who are not just referencing other pop culture things, but kind of going on a tangent and talking about how much they, because I think, was that the same? Maybe that wasn't the same scene, but I also remember when OJ and his sister go to the Wild West. They go to Stephen Yoon's office, and he's showing them all of his memorabilia, and he even shows them like the special back room with all of the even cooler memorabilia. And that just kind of seems like,
Yeah.
we're going to kind of take this trip down, this particular
Memory lane.
yeah, and kind of Hollywood history type
Right.
of thing. And I don't know. Now, so here's what bothers me.
Some of these filmmakers that are obsessive filmmakers, they just cannot help themselves. They can't help but make movies about movies or make movies about filmmaking.
Right.
I mean, you think of even the cinematographer character in this movie that's more in the later half of the movie. I feel like that's a Peele proxy, like a Peele stand-in in some ways.
Gotcha.
I mean, what will he do for the shot? What will this guy do for the money shot? I mean, it's... Yeah, interesting.
What will he give up for the shot? Is that what you're saying? Okay,
Yeah.
so let's get down to it here, because like you, I did not like this movie as much as Get Out. There were a lot of things that I liked about it. I have to say, overall, though, I was disappointed by this movie. I was disappointed not just kind of in a general sense, but almost more so because I really liked the way it started. I loved the way that for the first good half hour, 45 minutes of the movie, you're seeing different scenes. I mean, there's a scene that you described, that you kind of referred to, where there's a chimpanzee, and this is literally the very first scene, so this is not much of a spoiler if anybody's concerned. The first thing you see is the aftermath of this chimpanzee rampage on the set of a TV show. And like you say, I mean, the violence is more muted. It's kind of, off screen. You kind of, the sounds of the violence are more disturbing than the violence itself, or than what you're actually seeing. But so there's kind of, you're left thinking, okay, well, what's the significance of this, right? And then we have another scene, and that's when we see, something that happened several years ago on the ranch involving OJ's dad. That was kind of this mysterious thing, right? And then it kind of jumps ahead to the present day, and that's when we officially meet OJ and find out what's going on the ranch. We meet his sister. And I really enjoyed how there were all these different things that were not really connected, maybe kind of vaguely connected, and you're just kind of excited to see how it all came together. And I think for the most part, the things did get tied together, but I just really was kind of underwhelmed by where they all led. By the time the curtain had been pulled back and we were kind of in the third act, it was okay. Well, all right, yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I found myself kind of more shrugging, and honestly, and I fully admit that this might have been me missing something. But for me, it didn't feel like the pieces really came together as well as they could have, and it seemed like there were pieces that seemed like they were more important that didn't turn out to be quite as important. Now,
Yeah.
for example, the subplot about the chimpanzee, I got the idea that this was like this really huge significant thing. By the end of the movie, I wasn't so sure anymore, and
Right.
I kind of wondered if I had. Okay, so did I?
Did I miss it? Yeah.
Right,
For
right.
me, it was thematic. So I had the same thing, and
No,
I
and
wanted it
yeah,
to be related. I remember thinking that. Like, I wanted it to be related. I wanted this subplot to be directly related to the main plot of the movie in some
yeah,
way that was, like, going to all tie together.
uh huh,
And it really doesn't. It's interesting because it's more like, how does this person sort of both exploit and maybe even ignore in some ways the trauma of what should have been an extremely traumatic event that happened in his person's childhood,
yeah,
and then actually profit off of
right,
it,
right.
and then also deal with it in a way that just does not seem normal for what he should be dealing with. I mean, he's joking about it. He's talking about, like I said, the SNL skit,
Right.
and then sort of accepting, like, yeah, there's something crazy happening, and I'm gonna make money off it. There's interesting motivations of the characters that at first you're like, you're almost like, get out, like the name of Peele's first movie, and instead it's like, no, we want to prove this is happening. We want to stay here and prove what's really going
And
on.
I guess that was one
You
of the other
know?
things that I was frustrated with too, was that so on the one hand, and I actually touched on this in my written review,
Mm-hmm.
but what I mean, so once OJ and his sister kind of get a sense of what's going on, a big thrust, I guess, of the plot is their efforts to get photographic evidence of what's happening, right?
Yeah.
Including eventually the cinematographer that you referenced. And being a photographer myself, I love that. I've
Mm-hmm.
literally had nightmares about seeing incredible things and not being able to get my camera to work and get the picture. At the same time, given the magnitude of what else is going on, the idea of just being focused on getting a picture of it seemed kind of strange to me. Like,
Yeah.
this
That
is,
I thought the same thing.
so,
And it
yeah,
does become more conventional in the third act, I think.
yeah,
But yeah, that I remember thinking that. I'm like, okay, so this a good portion of this movie are these people whose whole goal is to try to prove, and they realize that if they can prove that what they think is happening is actually happening, that they can be very rich, I
yeah.
guess. But that's really a good chunk of it, is trying to prove what's really happening, and even if they might put themselves or others in peril. But
Yeah,
yeah.
which I believe. I mean,
Mhm.
the way I take it is that this is supposed to be a comment on our current culture in terms of grasping for fame, trying to find a way to
Mhm.
gain notoriety and fortune and all
Yeah.
this kind of thing. And so that's why I say, like, okay, I think I follow what's going on here. I think I follow what Peele is trying to say. I just didn't feel that moved by it. And
Mhm.
and so it was, and again, I mean, I would not call this a bad movie by any means. It seems a little messy. Like, I feel like it probably could have used a rewrite or two,
It could have been
maybe
a little
to,
tighter.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it could have come together in a more satisfying way.
Mhm.
But and honestly, it might just be kind of the downside of having so much early success. I mean, because Get Out was a genuinely really really good movie,
Mhm.
and when you give people that expectation, I guess the downside is they expect you to do that every time, and
Yeah.
that's why I mentioned this in the written review as well. But and I really I really hope this isn't the case, but the trajectory of the movies almost reminds me a little bit of Shyamalan, where he starts off with Sixth Sense, which was just fantastic and
Mhm.
incredible. Then Unbreakable was good, but not at the same level, and a little seemed to be a little bit of a step down. And then by the time he got into doing Signs in the Village, they were still entertaining, and I still enjoyed both of those movies, but it was obvious that he was kind of heading in a direction that And then
Not as great.
by the next few movies, you're kind of, ooh, he suddenly
Yeah.
became kind of a punchline, and I don't want that to happen to Jordan Peele. I like what he's doing. I like the fact that he's kind of trying some different genres and emphasizing some different aspects of our culture. I don't want him to just keep making Get Out 1, Get Out 2, Get Out 3, Get Out 4. I appreciate that. I didn't, like I said, I think disappointed is just the term that sprang to mind, because I I really
Yeah.
loved the potential that the movie set up early on, and just wasn't that impressed by the way it finally came together.
Yeah. I like, so here's another thing that I did like about it, and it was the because you mentioned signs, and as I'm watching the movie, I guess I'm thinking of like, okay, what was Peele thinking here? What's Peele thinking here? And there's certain things that remind me of, for example, Signs,
Sure. Oh
where
yeah.
it's sort of like this kind of desolate, out in the middle of nowhere. It's a family trying to
Hmm.
deal with this, and even A Quiet Place.
Yeah.
And I saw similarities. I think there were little references to even E.T. as I mentioned, but it was more involving the chimp probably than anything else.
Oh, call.
And do you know what I'm talking about?
I now that you mentioned it, I think I do. I think I
Yeah,
get it. Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, I think that was meant to be in there, and so and 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 then even like Close Encounters, and so there's all these little things where I feel like he's like, okay, let's because let me put it this way: these kind of movies where you have to figure out human ingenuity, human resourcefulness to have to try to defeat something that's otherworldly, and then try to find out what the weakness is and exploit it.
Hmm.
And it's done very creatively in a lot of these movies. So if you've seen A Quiet Place, and I don't want to spoil it, but there's something like that in A Quiet Place. There's something like that in Signs, and it's an unusual, like unique vulnerability that you probably wouldn't expect,
Yeah.
And there's something
Especially
like
with
that in here,
Signs.
especially with Signs. That one is hard to believe. It's
that
still a
was that was a
cool
stretch. That was a stretch. Let's
cool
say.
ending, cool stretch, and I really love the religious aspect of that movie. That's one movie
Hmm.
that I just thought I love the way they did the religion part in there, but in this movie, there's a couple like, and I'm not going to spoil them. But there's a couple little things I like that are twists that I thought, okay, that was cool. I'll buy that. I'll go along with that, and it's not something that I saw coming. It wasn't something that I expected. I mean, I thought a good alternate title of the movie could have been "Don't Look Up," but that was taken by another movie a year ago or a year and a half ago.
Right.
I mean, maybe Cowboys versus Aliens too. Um,
Right.
there's other movies, that, but Nope is just such a simple, almost, you know, humorously short title, and I realized
Yeah.
that's what Peele likes to do. His movie titles are all as short as possible,
Right.
you know.
Right. Yeah.
And then of course the theater I was in, they laughed every time, somebody was like, no, no, like they would just say nope.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I love the performances too. I mean, I guess we should talk about it for a second, but Daniel Kaluuya is sort of this hardened, quiet, one of the kind of guys that just never says more words than he needs to,
Hmm.
and so he's just and he's not a showman. He's not really that good at dealing with people, but he does. He's got a certain amount of like courage and bravery and
Hmm.
maybe a little bit of stubbornness, but he does not talk. And his sister's kind of the opposite,
Oh yeah.
played by Kiki Palmer, who was amazing in Aquila and the Bee. That was when I first saw her. Was this great spelling bee movie that she did as a child actress, probably about 12, 13 years ago.
Was it that long ago? I was trying to
It
think.
was a
I'm not even
while
sure if I've seen
ago.
that one. Man.
Oh, you should see it. It's a
Yeah.
great one. I've got it. Anyway, but she's more of the like, I'm gonna put on a little show. I'm gonna do a pitch. I'm gonna try to like just sell her personality to get what she wants.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so
and
they
that
make a
causes
good little
tension with
brother
them,
sister
right?
team. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But then it makes a good team for what they need to get done. But yeah, and I can't remember the other actor, but there's another actor in there
Oh yeah,
that
because
becomes
they
very
hire
involved,
a guy from like the local, whatever the equivalent of a
like a
Best
Best Buy.
Buy would be,
Yeah,
to come and install the security system, but they want to point all the cameras up in the sky, and so
hmm,
he figures it out, and kind of becomes a third
yeah.
wheel to their operation. But
Well, and
yeah.
yeah, and another thing I like about it that you because you were talking about, well, is it horror? Is it sci-fi? And it's funny. There's a little bit of a Western flavor in there,
Oh yeah,
right? I mean,
yeah,
because so much of it involves these horsemen, and there's a, you know, and I think what Peele did is it kind of starts out with um, and you learn this again very early on in the movie, but the people who run this Hollywood Horses, whatever their company is, they're related to the first person ever on film that was put into a
right,
movie, who was the black jockey in like those 15 or 20 frames that they put together, that
right.
were put together, that were made into a movie, because they were like frames that sort of were sequential photos,
Uh
and
huh.
it was the first motion picture. And um and then and and I'm not gonna spoil, but like there's some music near the end that is almost Ennio Morricone like. It reminded me
Mm.
exactly of one of my favorite soundtracks, which is The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Yeah.
And it's even got the voices. It sort of has this like choral voices along with the music, that sounds just like I don't know who even wrote the music for this movie, but it sounded like they were trying to channel Morricone, who did tons of Western movie music,
Oh yeah,
soundtracks.
yeah.
So there's a little bit of that in there. I mean, it's not, no one really would describe this movie as a Western, but it definitely has an influence.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah. No, and I got that sense too. Is that you know it's not a pure sci-fi. It's not a pure horror. It's got elements of Western.
Yeah.
It's got elements of Tarantino, like we say. Like there are definitely spots where it's like, oh yeah, this is totally something he would do. I guess he and Peele are kindred spirits. You know,
Hmm.
so
Yeah.
I don't know.
I
It makes me wish that I'd liked it more. Because I
it's
guess there are
yeah.
all these individual things that I really did like and appreciate,
Hmm.
but I guess it just didn't kind of add up to. I don't know. I mean, maybe what's really weird is I just thought of Big Lebowski for some reason, and how, like, if you take that as a cohesive movie, it's not very good. It's all over the place. It's a mess.
I Yeah.
It's crazy. But the individual elements of that movie are spectacular and iconic and crazy, and it's like the very definition of a cult hit, right?
Hmm.
I wouldn't put Nope on the same level, near
Yeah.
the same level, but it almost kind of has that same dynamic where there are individual things that you like, but I don't know that you can walk away from the movie itself. And I don't know. I seem to be in the minority on this one. I think people have given it generally
Pretty
a
good
better
reviews.
better review and
Yeah.
reaction than I have, but they're wrong. So
That's funny you say that, because it's funny you compare it to The Big Lebowski, because to me that's one of the most overrated movies I've ever seen. And
well, and that's why,
I
right?
I
Is
saw
because as a
and
movie,
I
it's
guess I had
really not
such
that good.
I had such high expectations, and I remember watching it. We had a snow day at Utah State. It snowed so much one time. I think it was 22 inches in 24 hours. They canceled all classes at the college.
Okay.
So I remember this. My roommates and I, we went, and we actually were able to get to the video store, of course. Couldn't go to class.
I know.
And we went to Blockbuster,
Those are
Hollywood Video, and we
priorities.
got the Big Lebowski, and we just watched it. So like, we don't have to go class, we have to watch it. So I was so excited. This would have been around 2000 or something, and I was just like, so just bored, and just like, it was too, like, I felt like it didn't earn the weirdness it was trying to go for. I don't know, it just didn't work for me. I don't know. And I like a lot of Coen Brothers stuff quite a bit,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
yeah.
No, and I think that's it. Is that it's you don't embrace the whole movie as kind of like a total experience. You look at
Yeah.
individual things, like you look at the characterizations and some of the weird lines and scenes and interactions, and that's the stuff that I think people really embrace. It's not because there's some. I mean, the twists and turns of the plot are almost just completely pulled out of a hat. I mean, there's very little that's cohesive about it. But I mean, I do have my poster of Richard Nixon bowling. That I don't know. Maybe I'll have to put that up in place of Elvis for one of these
Yeah.
episodes. But yeah. So any final thoughts on Nope? Or are we
Um,
ready to move on?
I have a story that relates a little bit, and because one thing I've noticed, and I've read a little enough about Us to know, he Peele involves animals in his movies, as
Mm.
probably a little more than the average filmmaker, at least so far. And there's a little deer, kind of a deer theme in Get Out, rabbits in Us, and this movie has multiple animals, but mainly
Right, right.
horses.
Yeah.
And also we keep bringing up this chimp, but like I have a story that my dad told me when he went to Hogle Zoo one time, and he went to the cat house, but not really a cat house, but it's where they have all the big
Oh,
cats,
okay. Yeah.
like the lions and the tigers. And he saw a lion, and it was a a big lion, male lion with a mane, and he looked at it. And so what happened is, for a moment, he and the lion, like, they sort of locked eyes, and it was like the lion was looking right at him and not
Mm.
and not turning away. And so what he did is he decided just to do a little social experiment,
Oh, God.
and he bared his teeth. He kind of opened his mouth and bared his teeth at the lion, and the lion just roared. Apparently, a lion's roar is like ridiculously loud. Like in the jungle, like you can supposedly hear it from miles away. I don't know if that's true, but like the lion roared and jumped at him to the glass, to the front of the glass. And all the people that were standing in front of my dad were all scared and jumped back. And it was an extremely tense, scary moment. And and so, like, I think one of the things that Peel is trying to probably tell us is respect. There's a certain healthy level of fear and respect we should have for animals, for creatures, for
Yeah.
whatever, and
Yeah.
kind of learn what makes them tick. And it was interesting because obviously that would have been a really dumb thing to do if my dad were in the jungle or whatever on a safari. But there's a big, huge, thick glass enclosure that the lion's in, so it's not going to hurt anybody. But it sure wanted to.
Oh, God. That's a great
But
story.
yeah, it was. I know. I wish I could have seen that, but I'm sure I would have been scared out of my mind.
Oh, yeah. That would have been a memorable experience for sure. Oh, man. Okay. Well, so that's Nope. But I guess on a more somber note, we have one of, I guess, a sequence. Like, I hadn't even really thought about this until you pointed it out in the text. But so pretty recently, James Caan passed away.
Hmm.
Who, I don't know. I guess it depends on who you ask what he is remembered for, because probably to you and I, he's Sonny from the Godfather movies mostly. I mean, that's kind of his most celebrated role. He was also, one of the leads in Misery, the Stephen King adaptation with Kathy Bates about the imprisoned novelist.
Uh-huh.
But then I get the sense that probably the more time goes on, more people will probably remember. Like, the upcoming generation is going to know him from Elf as
Hmm.
Will
Walter
Ferrell's,
Hobbs.
yeah,
Yeah.
Walter Hobbs, Will Ferrell's father.
Hmm.
But however you know him, I think people can agree that he had some. Well, actually, what else was he was in Bottle Rocket? Remember in
Oh, I
the
don't
first
remember
the
that.
first Wes Anderson movie, he was the kind of the gang leader, the local. He like has he runs the lawn business, but then he kind of has like the criminal side stuff going on. Anyway, wherever you come across him, does some great work, some really memorable characters, and he passed away. But then, like I said, it wasn't really until you'd pointed out, Mark, that he is one of a few different actors known for kind of gangster movie roles that's
Hmm.
passed away. Who else did you have on that list?
Well, before you moved on, I wanted to mention one of my favorite sort of unsung roles by
Okay,
James Caan, and
sure.
it's Tim Lockwood. So, do you know the Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs franchise?
Oh,
Have you seen
okay,
any of those?
yeah. Did he voice one of those roles?
He's the father of Flint Lockwood, the
Okay.
scientist inventor, the main character, and
Oh, okay.
and he's so funny. He really does have a great voice. And I mean, you even hear it as Elf. Like you could just listen to some of his scenes in Elf, and you'd be like, that's a voice of a. He does great voice work, and so it's one of those little just like family classics for us because it's surprisingly funny, not just for kids, but like Holly and I crack up at this
The
movie.
the meat
And
the meatballs movie or the
yeah,
yeah.
Meatballs, Bill Hader. And Bill Hader, I've seen an interview with him talking about working with James Caan and basically calling him Sonny. I mean, it was just he's such an iconic character in The Godfather, and Bill Hader's a big cinephile, and so it was really fun for him to work with James Caan on that movie. But yeah, I don't know if I've seen a lot of his other movies. I probably can't name 4 or 5 other roles of James Caan's.
Yeah,
You know?
I think if we got onto the IMDb page, I'd
We probably
probably
could,
recognize a
yeah.
few more. But those are definitely the ones that I think those are the ones that
Right.
I heard referenced when I was reading kind of other people's tributes to him. Was it was Godfather, it
Godfather,
was
Elf.
Misery, it was Elf,
Yeah, those are
and
the main ones. I think he was in Thief too. I'd have to look that up,
Thief.
but I'm thinking of a Michael Mann movie called Thief.
Yeah.
But yeah,
His role in Bottle Rocket is pretty funny.
okay.
He's it's so after oh my gosh, of course I'm gonna so the Wilson brothers, like the two of them are trying to kind of put together their own little small time crooks adventures and escapades, and Owen Wilson has used to work for James Caan's landscaping business, and the landscaping business is kind of a front for some illegal activities on the side, and so Caan is kind of the head of all that, and his role is he brings what you would expect James Caan to bring to the role, but yeah, for me, number one though is far and away Sonny in The Godfather.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I think that as good as the other ones are, that really kind of there are too many moments that you just cannot forget.
I know. He's so scary. I mean, he just flies off the handle. He's the thing I like about it is, it's Coppola who did the movie, and he cast so many Italian American actors, and then James Caan. He's like the biggest
who's
star
not?
of the movie who's not Italian American.
Yeah.
And I guess probably Robert Duvall as well, playing Tom Hagen, but Robert Duvall is not even playing an Italian character in the movie.
Well, his character
He's
was
German
adopted,
Irish,
right? Yeah.
Yeah,
He was supposed
adopted.
to be somebody who was brought into the family from the outside.
Yeah, yeah. I love it when they go and meet the movie producer near the beginning of the movie in California, and the guy's just horrible. He's like racist and bragging about his flings with these young actresses, and he uses the term like Dago, Wop, these Italian slurs. And I remember like he accuses him of being one of these Italian slur names, and
I know.
Tom Hagen goes, I'm German Irish, and then the guy goes, all right, my Kraut Mick friend. That was his very next line.
That's right.
Yeah, and so
He's just ready with whatever you are. He's ready with an insult.
Right. But James Caan, yeah, he does such a I just love his performance in that, and obviously he couldn't really be in all the movies because of what happens to him.
Oh, right. Well, no, and that's what I mean is that for a movie that is just kind of wall to wall with memorable moments and scenes, some of his are just absolutely the best. I mean, I don't know, for the sake of anybody who still wants to watch it for the first time, I guess we shouldn't spoil too much about his final scene in the movie,
right?
Which is probably the number one most iconic. But I remember the scene where he goes after, because Talia Shire. So Sonny is Al Pacino's older brother, right? So isn't Sonny the oldest, or was Fredo was Fredo next?
I think it was.
Or was Fredo the oldest?
Sonny, and then Fredo. But that's a good question. I don't know for sure. I should know. But I think it's Sonny, and then
Sonny was
Fredo.
oldest, yeah.
And then
and then Fredo, and then
Michael
Talia
and
Shire
Connie.
from the Rocky movies, yeah. So she plays Connie, the sister, and when Connie's husband is, I think he's abusing her. Is basically what's going on.
Yeah, Carlos.
Yeah. Sonny goes after him with a
a
trash
vengeance.
can lid.
Yeah.
Just, yeah.
Well, and that's funny you mentioned that, because that's one of the few. I mean, it's not a perfect movie like a lot of movies, like many people think it is. There's a scene when Sonny's throwing punches at Carlos, and he clearly misses. And they have the camera directly like between both of them. It's not like an over the shoulder shot.
Oh, okay.
And he throws a punch at Carlos, and he misses by a good like 6 inches. And Carlos, he still jerks his head back,
He
and
was
it
dodging it.
always kind
He was just trying to dodge it. That's what he was doing. He was
yeah,
just trying to dodge it.
yeah. But
Oh,
anyway, yeah,
that's
we
great.
miss
That's great.
James Caan he was iconic, and so yeah, so I guess Ray Liotta had died before James
That's
Caan,
right. Yeah, Ray
right?
Liotta.
Ray
Right.
Liotta, and then
Okay.
Sorvino was the one who just died last week, Paul Sorvino, but
Did he just die last week?
or within the last few days, I believe.
Oh wow,
Yeah,
I didn't realize that. So
yeah.
because weren't we also thinking of oh my gosh, now I'm gonna mess up his name. From Sopranos. Gandolfini. He was a few years ago.
Oh, he died about 10 years ago, didn't he?
Was it 10 years ago?
I think so. Yeah,
Yeah.
Paul Sorvino died July 25th, so 2 days ago
Wow.
from when
I
we're
did not.
recording this.
Okay. That I did not even know.
Yeah, and it's interesting because he and Liotta are both in Goodfellas,
Right.
and for
Right.
me, Ray Liotta. I don't know if I'm saying it right. He is like he's kind of the heart of that movie,
Oh
and
yeah.
I don't really. I mean, it's just Goodfellas. Like there's really not another major movie for me for Ray Liotta. I mean, he's so important in Goodfellas.
Now, okay. Well, so now this he didn't have the same level of importance for sure, but was he also in Copland? Wasn't he
I
the one who was kind of the sidekick to Sylvester Stallone's sheriff?
I have not seen that, but he probably
Okay.
was. Yeah.
Anyway, so well, so I don't know if this was intentional or not, but when I think about iconic gangster movies, right? Because this kind of discussion, you just kind of have to start thinking about, all of the famous gangster movies, and there are so many, and Martin Scorsese made about 2/3 of them. and, but like it really does kind of come down, at least to me, it comes down to, Godfather / Godfather 2 and Goodfellas.
Hmm.
And I first saw The Godfather when I was a teenager, and so it was kind of this. You're young enough to just kind of think, "Wow, that is so cool," and just kind of the mystic, kind of romanticized element that just is saturated in that movie. I mean, and that's I think that's one of the things that I feel really conflicted about with The Godfather is that, it's very clearly about evil, criminal, horrible people doing horrible things, but it's so
Hmm.
romanticized that you're kind of cheering for the bad guys in some cases, and it's you're willing to overlook things that I think in other contexts would just be completely unacceptable, and I remember just kind of thinking about that as an example of, well, because there are times when, as a working as a movie critic, I've been faced with a situation where, okay, well, this is a very, very well executed movie, but I really have a problem with what it's saying.
Yeah.
Right? The moral message is a problem, but the acting is so good and the writing is so good and the story is so engaging, right? And I
Hmm.
and when I think about that conflict, I think about The Godfather, because it's really just one of the absolute best movies ever made. But it,
Well,
it really does kind of overly romanticize something that doesn't
it's kind of
deserve such
yeah.
affection.
Yeah, I agree. So like I've heard that I think it was Francois Truffaut, the French film director, who basically said it's impossible to make a true anti-war movie because in depicting war, you depict something that's exciting and action oriented and involves bravery and courage, and he gives all these reasons why it's really hard to
Yeah,
make an anti-war movie. And
right.
then I think in Ebert in his review said something like, well, Truffaut's never seen Platoon, or something. It's like, finally, here's one that is just, this has got to be the anti-war movie. But then, and so I read, and I've always been a fan of Ebert, so I read a lot of his reviews. And when he wrote about The Godfather, he said, it's told within a closed world, an entirely closed world, so we sympathize with characters who are essentially evil. And it is a closed world because you don't really get to know anybody who's not part of this family
Yeah,
very well at all. I mean,
right.
you see, even like the police officer, and I mean, the one police officer you kind of get to know in the movie is a
Is fully
crooked cop.
corrupt.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's
right,
corrupt.
right.
And so, of course, you start to sympathize with the family, and they use the word a lot. If you notice in The Godfather, they don't use the word mafia. They
Right.
deliberately avoid using that word. I don't even remember if it's in the book either, but I think it was a deliberate
I
choice.
hated
And
the book. I read the book at like a
then,
couple of years after watching the movie and
yeah,
adoring the movie, and I hated the book so much.
I didn't mind it, but I definitely loved the choices. I'm going to just say the exclusions, the
Right. Well,
omissions
that's what I
that
mean.
Coppola didn't include that were in the book, the movie. Like one of the ones that I always just shocked me is so the whole movie producer subplot of putting
Yeah.
Johnny Fontaine in the movie, making the threat against him, the horse's head. Well, they go so far in the book with that he wins an Oscar. I mean, it's almost like, and it's so funny to me because if you had put a subplot in a movie about the Oscars being rigged, I don't think The Godfather would have won as many Oscars as it did. And even the second one, which won even more,
That's a good
right?
point.
Yeah, I mean, it won Best Picture, it didn't win Best Director, but it won Best Actor. And then the second Godfather won like 6 or 7 Oscars. But the book has like this whole subplot about Oscars being rigged, and so that wasn't included in the
Yeah.
movie. And there's other things. There's even more like just sexual content in the book
That's
that
what I was gonna say.
thankfully is
Like,
not in the
oh, I
movie.
know. I'm reading
Yeah.
the book, just thinking, what the crap,
Yeah,
you
like why
know?
is this? Is this a classic? And you're like, well, I guess Coppola got what he needed out of it.
Well, and on
Um,
a similar note, because I'm absolutely one of the people who will say that, in the vast majority of situations the book is going to be better than the movie.
yep.
But those exceptions are The Godfather and Jaws. I
Oh,
hated the Jaws book too, for kind
yeah.
of the same reasons. Like it has like this affair plot, subplot going through
Oh,
with the chief's wife and the Richard Dreyfuss character that
oh,
just,
really?
oh yeah,
Okay.
no, it's just kind of what? And
Yeah,
then yeah, Spielberg made several good decisions about that one apparently, and yeah, so that I remember reading the Godfather novel and just, oh, like what on earth, because it
that's
seems, I
funny.
guess I guess maybe once you've seen the movie versions and when the movies are so good,
Hmm.
you just think, what does this have to do with anything? It seems so ancillary, so
Yeah.
unnecessary. But anyway, so
I
yeah,
mean,
so I would
yeah.
go
When you
see
think
the movie.
about
Don't
it,
read the book in those cases.
the all-time classic movies, I mean, they should be better than the book. So yeah, hopefully they are like movies like The Godfather and Jaws, you know. And I haven't read Jaws, but I don't. It's not on my list.
I wouldn't.
So,
I wouldn't bother. I wouldn't bother. Yeah, but
yeah.
no, because well, it's so okay. So the point I was making my way towards earlier was, so where I had some reservations with The Godfather in terms of its, romanticizing, and I completely follow what you're saying about kind of like the enclosed world, and that does make a lot of sense because I think it would be a lot harder to sympathize with those characters if you saw the results of their actions on innocent people, and you don't really
Hmm.
see that in the Godfather movies that I'm thinking off the top of my head, except for maybe Michael's wife in Sicily who gets blown up in the car, but you know. There's a
Apollonia.
there's a there's a
Yeah.
50-year spoiler alert there. So anyway, but then several years later, I watch Goodfellas, and Goodfellas is just kind of a no holds barred, just flat out. I mean, it's based on, unlike The Godfather, it's based on a true story. It's a Henry Hill who is kind of probably one of the most famous. What would you say? Ex ex
Mob,
mobster,
mob rats. Just kidding.
mob rats,
Yeah. Stool pigeon.
witness protection guys. Anyway, so this is his life story basically, and it covers, gosh, I mean, it starts probably in the 40s or 50s and wraps up somewhere in the 80s. And just unlike The Godfather, there's nothing romantic. I mean, it tries to explain what drew him to that life, and that it definitely
Hmm.
kind of romanticizes that, but only in the sense that, Scorsese is trying to portray this is the life that the character wanted and that this is why he got into it. but then along the way you're encountering all this other stuff, and eventually you wind up in this situation where you're strung out on drugs and
Hmm.
paranoid about helicopters following you, and all of your friends, you know, sending you down alleys so you can be killed, and so as difficult and challenging as it was to watch Goodfellas, I think I've still only watched it once all the way through.
I think same with me.
It I felt like it was a very honest and, you know, morally accurate and sound
Yeah,
movie in that sense, right?
that's a good
It's
point.
kind of like saying you've seen The Godfather, now this is what organized crime really is.
Yeah,
And
this is really what happens. This is does not lead to a good result.
yeah.
I mean, although in The Godfather, it doesn't either for
Oh,
many of the
right,
people, but
right.
yeah.
But even that's
Hmm.
romanticized though, right? You know, I mean, and that's what I mean is that
Yeah.
there's kind of this, there's a very melodramatic quality to it that, you know, I don't know if I would say it makes martyrs out of the characters,
Hmm.
but their deaths are kind of iconic and brutal, and you know, but not in the sense that just like in Goodfellas, it's just appalling, you know,
Yeah.
and just, and I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't even say that, because when I watched it, I don't know that I knew it was based on a true story. So I don't know if that would have made a difference to me at the time.
Hmm.
You could argue that it's more visceral for that reason, because you're basically seeing what is actually happening, or
Hmm.
at least depending on the dramatization, right? But no, but well, and then you can kind of flip it around, and I'm thinking about some of the other ones, like I think Untouchables might have been one of the very first mobster movies I ever saw,
Hmm.
and which is much more of kind of your kind of romanticized, even though it's, you know, you got some good guys here, and the bad guys are bad guys and the good guys are good guys, and because that's the one about Elliot Ness chasing down Al Capone back in the, was in the 1930s. You
Hmm.
got Kevin Costner as Elliot Ness and Robert De Niro as Al Capone. That one you've seen in Untouchables, right?
Yeah, I've seen that. And
Yeah.
Sean Connery won the
Yep.
Oscar
Sean
for it.
Connery. Yeah.
Hmm.
No, that's a fantastic one. I actually have been to Al Capone's grave, believe it or not.
Is that in Chicago?
It is. Well,
Okay.
it's in one of the near west suburbs. There's a big cemetery. I think it's called Olivet, and so we got word of where his gravestone was and tracked it down. And I've been there a couple of times. And it's just kind of like this little kind of nondescript little stone,
Yeah.
but it's the grass. I remember the last time I was there, noticing how the grass was just kind of beat to crap all around it,
Hmm.
and one of the lands, you know, the groundskeepers people or whatever was there, and he was annoyed because I guess it gets a lot of visitors, and so the grass is always beat up around it because there's so many people there wanting to
Wow.
get a selfie with Al, but
That's funny. It's so I'm reading a book right now by Bill Riley and Martin Dugard called "Killing the Mob." It's part of his Killing series.
okay, I was gonna
He did
say
like
so
killing
that's who he's
Jesus,
killing now,
killing
right?
Lincoln, killing Reagan. So I've read a lot of those books. Killing the Killers, which is about hunting terrorists, basically, and that's his newest one. But Killing the Mob was from like a year or two ago, so it's fairly
Okay,
new. And it's funny how, because you keep using the word romanticized, and
yeah,
he starts with basically like the early, like the 20s, like 1920s, like Bonnie and Clyde type time period.
okay, yeah,
And it's funny because even before the times where like there were movies or TV or even where everybody was watching movies, like these people that would go around robbing banks, and this is pre Al Capone, they were like public figures that people just loved. Even as
yeah.
people were
It's
being
folk
robbed,
heroes,
sometimes they
yeah.
like wanted their pictures with them and they wanted like souvenirs, and because most of these guys weren't out just killing random innocents. They were just trying to get money or whatever.
Uh-huh.
And even people like Al Capone had almost like heroic status with some people. It almost seems like well, and I don't know, like there's just quite a few of these people that like I'm surprised at how much they were considered to be not. I guess what I'm trying to say is not everybody was against him the way you would think, like, oh, Osama bin Laden or where everyone in the
Oh
world
yeah.
hates him, like Hitler,
Uh-huh.
like there's these people that there's no question that everybody just, they're despicable in every way. But like some of these people, it's almost like they understand, especially with the Dust Bowl time of the 30s and 40s. It's like, hey, they're getting back to the against the big rich banks, the big bad banks, that are taking everybody's homes or whatever. And yeah, I mean, Al Capone he was just a bad guy, and I mean, I think he ended up dying of like syphilis or
I
something,
think
right?
so. Yeah,
Yeah,
because
and
he was finally imprisoned for tax evasion. Like that's
you're
how they got
right.
him. And
Yep.
he was sent out to Alcatraz, right?
Mm-hmm.
And no, but I think I heard that's how he finally died was from
It's
syphilis.
which is weird
So
because so many of these people were killed by either by other mobsters or by people in their own
yeah,
clan or by
yeah.
cops. I mean, a lot of these people died in pretty violent deaths. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure his was a painful,
Not
unhappy
with a
death,
bang, but a
but
whimper, I guess.
yeah, he was
Yeah.
fairly young. Wasn't he like 40s, late 40s or
If that,
something?
yeah. I don't. I as I recall, he was
Yeah,
pretty. He was comparatively young.
yeah.
But yeah, no, and so I'm trying to think of like some of the other. Like I said,
Untouchables.
it seems like
Yeah.
Scorsese made half of these movies. 'Cause I'm thinking about Irishman
Hmm.
and Casino. That would be considered a mob movie, right?
Yeah.
And then oh, there was
Do
something
you know
else I
what the
was thinking
common
about.
thread in every single
Departed was
movie
it?
you've
Isn't
just
Departed?
named? Okay. Is De Niro in Departed? I don't think he is.
I'm not sure he was.
Okay. Other than Departed, every single movie you've named has De Niro in it. Oh, no, never mind. He's in The Godfather too. He's not in the first one.
I was gonna
He's in
say
the
he's not in
second
the
one.
first one, but he's. I
He's in,
mean,
yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to not. Some of these movies, I find it hard to separate Godfather 1 or 2.
Mm,
They're kind of. It's like if you're gonna see one, you got to see the other. And
yeah.
nobody's just going to see the second one, but then if you're going to see the first one, you got to see the second one, right? So we
Hmm.
might as well have been in the first one. I don't know, but
It's not a consensus, but there are quite a few critics who believe the second is better than the first. That it's just plain superior. And I
yeah.
don't think so. But I think it's a really, really good movie. And
Oh
it
yeah, it's
sort of,
fantastic.
it tells those parallel stories of like early 1900s.
Yeah,
How did he become, how did the Marlon Brando Godfather character become the Godfather? And then like Michael's sort of even more evil descent into
yeah.
to evil, in the like the 50s, 60s.
Well,
So like,
because the first movie is the story of Al Pacino's character, like Mike. So Al Pacino plays Michael Corleone, who's
mhm,
Marlon Brando is his son, and the first movie is essentially. I'm just for the sake of anybody who hasn't already seen these movies, the first movie is effectively the story of Michael's fall, like
yeah,
his, it's Breaking Bad in a 3-hour movie about
hmm,
gangsters, right? And
yeah,
and so part two is both a prequel, like you say, it's kind of it's telling Vito's
yeah,
early story, his origin story, but then it's also saying, okay, well, this is what happens to Michael after the events of the first one, fast forward 10, 15, 20 years in the future.
yeah.
And as he tries to take the family out to Nevada and to
Hmm.
to Reno and stuff. But yeah,
Well,
no,
and
it's
yeah, when you say his fall, though, it might be misleading for people because it's his moral fall, but it's his
right,
rise to
right,
power, right?
right.
Yeah, yeah. That's
Well,
it's
I mean, just because I guess from the perspective of when we meet him at the beginning of the first Godfather, he is a recently returned veteran from World War
hmm,
II, and so he's a war hero,
right.
and he is explicitly separate from the family business, doesn't want a part of it, doesn't want to have anything to do with it. But then one thing leads to another, and by the end of the movie, he's basically
The Godfather.
yeah,
Yeah,
no, quite literally. I mean, that's
right.
that's kind of like
That's the final
the end of the
scene.
movie is him officially taking that role. And so
Which,
yeah, like you
yeah,
say, is a fall in moral terms, even if it's concurrent to a rise to power. So
yeah. That final scene, I love it. I love the door closing on
It has been
Diane
used
Keaton.
so
And
many times.
Seinfeld sends that
Yeah.
up where Kramer is like the Godfather, and the door gets closed on like Jerry and George. I think maybe Elaine too.
I'm trying to
It's
remember
it's
that they
funny.
there have been so many references to
Yeah,
that scene, where some character is getting shut out and just peeking through the door as it closes. But
yeah.
oh yeah, no, and so oh god, what other did
You
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 did you
named
like?
him.
I
Oh,
mean,
go
did you
ahead.
like The Irishman?
I thought it was fine. I mean, it was so long for me, and I it's probably the kind of movie I would appreciate on a rewatch. But I thought it was fine. I mean, it was that year that so many good movies came out. So for me, it just
Yeah,
wasn't
that's
one of the
right.
top movies. It was like
Yeah,
2019.
right,
Um,
right.
but I mean, it was the thing that I remember now. One of the things that did bother me about it, and I know they spent a ton of money doing this, but so there's de-aging technology they use to try to make Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci appear younger, like in their 20s or whatever, when in reality they're at the time of the movie, I think when it was made, they're in their 70s.
Hmm.
And there's a part where Robert De Niro's like beating up a guy, kicking him, stomping him against the curb, and just by Robert De Niro's body, you could tell
You
it's an
can
older
tell that
guy.
he's an older guy.
Right, but like he's de-aged and his face is younger, and Joe Pesci's
Yeah,
face is younger in a good chunk of the movie. But even when you look at it, it's this uncanny valley
right,
feeling where
right.
you're like, that doesn't look quite right. And maybe they could have got different actors. I mean, Godfather 2, there's
Oh
different
yeah,
actors playing these
yeah.
people, and that was 1974. But so I remember that being something that probably bothered me more than it bothered most people. Um,
I think I kind of think that the general rule, and I've thought about this as I've watched, various, you know, the examples that spring to mind first are the ones in Star Wars with, Rogue One. But like, if you find yourself thinking about what they've done,
mhm,
if you find yourself, even if you're thinking, oh, that looks pretty good, that's
mhm.
kind of the giveaway, right?
Right,
Like,
right.
because it's not supposed to be a distraction. You're
Yeah,
just
like
supposed to see a character. And if all you're thinking about is how good or how bad the CGI is to make them look one particular age, I think you've
mhm.
already kind of lost the
Yeah.
battle, you
Like,
know?
oh, that's supposed to be Princess Leia. Okay, yeah, I can
Yeah.
see that. Or the end of the Mandalorian, like, oh, that's Luke. Is that Luke Skywalker? And
Yeah.
you're looking at his face and oh,
Right.
how'd they do that? But I
And well, and
guess
then I don't know. I wish that they would not in those cases. I think if the characters had just kept their mouths shut,
maybe it
they
would
would have
work.
gotten away with it better because it's like the more they performed, the
Hmm.
more obvious it was that their mouth is moving, but the rest of their face is so still.
Well, maybe what they could
It's
do is they
just
could show the face and then they could do a cutaway, but still have the actor read the line, have the actor say
yeah,
what they
right,
know to
right.
say, and
No, exactly.
something like that, and
Sure,
then maybe it would work. And
sure.
yeah, I don't know. The other thing you could do is just do a really long shot, maybe, instead of a close up, but you want to see faces. I mean, going back to
Yeah,
Nope, I
I
I
don't know.
loved. There's so many close-ups on Daniel Kaluuya's face, and I liked it. I mean, I like watching him. I think he's a great actor, and figuring out what he's thinking, and yeah, I mean, so you just you want to see close-ups of faces. You
Yeah,
know, I, I I almost get annoyed when movies avoid it for too long. It feels lazy or something. But
yeah.
yeah, that de-aging stuff, it just didn't work for me with The Irishman.
Yeah, no, I
It'll
wouldn't
get
say
better.
that was like my biggest issue with it. I mean, not that I have a big list of issues with it. It just wasn't one of my favorite movies. But well, so how about this for an exit question then? Because we haven't broached this topic within the gangster movie genre.
Okay.
What's your feelings about Godfather 3?
Oh yeah, I have a lot of feelings. I've heard people talk so negatively about it, make fun of it, that I've defended it because I think when you're comparing a movie to two of the greatest movies of all time, of course it's going to falter by
Sure.
comparison. Like
Yeah.
and literally, I mean, people overuse the word literally, but literally, I think Godfather 1 and 2 are, two of the top 20 or 30 movies ever, and Godfather 1 is really one of my all-time favorites. I mean, like, it's here, I'll show you. See that?
Hey, what's that
And
say?
there's Life is Beautiful. I mean, that's the Godfather right there, right? Can you see it? Am I even pointing it the right way? Anyway, I love it. I just love the Godfather. It's always been one of my favorites, and I watch it a lot. And the third one, if you just think about it as a movie, and not really compare it to the other two, I think it's good. I don't think it's a great movie, and I don't think it's funny. It came out the same year as Goodfellas, so it was competing with Goodfellas for Best Picture, and it came out in 1990. And I think it's good. It's fine, and it's got some pretty traumatic, like tragic scenes, and it's even got the end of Michael Corleone. It has some pretty bad acting by Sofia Coppola.
Yeah,
that's a little hard to stomach.
It was supposed to be Winona Ryder. She was supposed to play the role originally, and then she had to back out. I think she got sick or something.
Oh, and then it was Francis's daughter.
So he plugged in, who became a great filmmaker, right?
Oh yeah,
very very good director. But people weren't too crazy about her performance. No, I remember a lot of specific things. I like a lot of individual moments in Godfather 3, but it's not on the same level. I mean I think his biggest value might be the one quote from Michael when he's like, every time I think I'm out, they pull me back in.
Yeah, that's one of the great quotes.
That definitely deserves to be in the pantheon of Godfather quotes. So
yeah, especially the way he pulls his arm into his chest too, his hands in, and then it's got Sonny's son. So you kind of get the legacy of Sonny continued through Andy Garcia, his like illegitimate son, I guess, and he's got the same temper as Sonny,
right.
And just kind of like the heart of a killer. But I like. I thought it was really good, and apparently, and I haven't seen this, but Francis Ford Coppola has recut the Godfather 3. And it's quite different from what I hear. And he's renamed it. It's called The Death of Michael Corleone.
Oh,
it's called like The Godfather 3, The Death of Michael Corleone. And he did it about a year and a half ago, and I just still haven't seen it. But I'd like to see it.
Maybe I'll have to check that out.
See how different it is.
He kind of has that habit, doesn't he? Because, I mean, it was just a little while ago that I saw his alternate version, which was supposed to be his original version of The Outsiders, where it's like the entire novel instead of just kind of like the chopped up part that you saw in the book, in the original version of the movie. And I mean, how many different versions has he released of Apocalypse Now? Right?
Oh yeah, I haven't seen the Redux, but yeah, Apocalypse Now Redux, I guess is another one.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Something about those San Francisco directors, those Bay Area directors from the 70s who just can't leave well enough alone. Him and George, they're good buddies.
That happens. Yeah, I don't know. And it's funny because he really like that. The 70s was his heyday, and I don't know if he's really made a great movie since Apocalypse Now. Has he?
Outsiders was good. I really did like Outsiders quite a bit. I think the movie's probably more heralded for all the people that it introduced to Hollywood more than the movie itself. But gosh, and see, I just barely watched Tucker, The Man in His Dream, the one with I think it was Jeff Bridges, about the guy who was trying to reinvent the car. Or
I liked that one.
Mm-hmm. No, that was good. Yeah. I mean, it was no great movie, but I'm trying to think of what else I know he's done stuff, but yeah, I think you're probably right. I mean, I don't know that anything he did outside of the 70s has near the same regard. I rewatched Conversation a little while ago, and that's that's quite good. Which he did in between the first two Godfather movies, I guess.
Yeah, but he had a great run. I mean, from 72 to 74. So, I mean, it's funny, just those two or three movies and Apocalypse Now kind of etched him in film lore.
Oh, yeah.
No matter what else he did. And he's he's never been a prolific, like Scorsese or Woody Allen or somebody that just has to make a movie every year or two. And He's very proud of his wine business. Apparently, he
Oh,
has a winery, and that's a huge deal for him. And I think I read an article recently about him, and he's probably 80, mid 80s. So almost, yeah, I think he's done making movies, but
probably
yeah,
be.
Godfather's definitely up there. It's a fun one to talk about.
It is, and nice little send off tribute. Thank you to
Hmm.
James Caan, and
Yep.
well, we got because we talked about Goodfellas, we got Paul Sorvino in there too.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't mention
I didn't even
Sorvino, but
realize.
both Ray Liotta and Sorvino both died this year, and they were two of the main.
Yeah,
I mean, along with De Niro and Pesci, those kind of were the four main guys in
right,
Goodfellas.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's some good stuff. Well, I think we've probably given our our audience plenty to digest there in terms of gangster movies and Nope and a little taste of 13 Lives. So that's covered some good ground today. Of course, if you guys have comments or questions or thoughts to pass on, we'd love to hear from you. And if you got some time, please hop on to iTunes or Spotify or wherever you're listening to or watching the podcast and give us a positive review, build us up, and maybe give us some ideas for things you'd like to hear us cover in future episodes. But until then, Mark, you just be careful with those caves you go exploring, and
Hmm.
I'll try to do the same. Talk to you guys next time.